Hey everyone, I'm sorry, it is so hot. But I'm just sitting in the sun because it's the best. It's the best lighting. The sun makes the best and most painful lighting. And I'm wearing a black shirt, which wasn't smart of me, but I didn't really have any clothes. So I just wanted to make this quick episode for my friend Bear. They've been catching up on my episodes, so I figured instead of having a normal episode come out this Monday, the something 16th? Sure, that sounds like a Monday. I figured I'll make an easy episode. I'm recording on my DJI Osmo Pocket 3. I hope it turns out well, because I actually can't see myself right now. The screen blacks out after a minute. I can have it so that it doesn't do that, but that just sounds like a waste of battery. Anyway, so I've interviewed 5 of my really awesome guy friends for my Moment of Clarity podcast series. And I figured to also help Bear and to give I won't really call it a synopsis, but just a what I've gathered so far. I've recorded 6 episodes actually, but I'm going to release the 6th episode, which stars my really good friend Toby, one of the 3 hosts of the Melanated Council. It was me, Toby, and Ron. I'm interviewing Ron on Monday. But for the 5 episodes that we've recorded so far, I wanted to talk about just wanted to reflect on the last 5 episodes. So I'm gonna not really be interviewing myself, but I might do that. That might be an episode. Let me know if you'd like me to interview me, the same questions that I interview everybody else in. But yeah, I wanted to just reflect on the last 5 episodes and share just things that I've realized, which have been really, really interesting. But first and foremost, I want to share why I decided to create this podcast and why I named it Moment of Clarity. So this was way before the current president was elected. I know I've talked to my friend Gil about it, I've had this idea for a while now of just interviewing my guy friends in general, but my guy friends specifically, because there's just a lot of, in my opinion, crap out there in the podcast sphere, in the podcast verse, especially for young boys and young men. I have 2 young nephews. One is 20, the other one is 13. I am quite concerned about what they, could be consuming because of just what has become normalized. It's weird because if my oldest nephew is 20 and I'm 33, so it's only a 13-year age difference, and yet what I used to see growing up versus I'm sure what the content that's just out there readily available is just so different than what I grew up listening to and seeing and things like that. Granted, I'm not a guy, so maybe this is just the same, except from when I talk to my guy friends about this, it's clearly not. So I just find it to be very concerning. I didn't really see any podcast hosts. The top ones, of course, are going to interview famous people who are super rich and own 50 bajillion companies and are just people that the average person is never going to be. Let's be honest. The average person is not going to be, a billionaire. The average person won't even become a millionaire, So, and of course, billionaire to millionaire is not remotely close, but the average person isn't even going to be that. So it's why do we keep listening to these people who, like, I understand we can always learn from people, of course. It's just we keep learning from the same kinds of people when I feel like we should be trying to learn from just everyday people who don't have a platform, who are just going to work and making a living and getting by, hanging out with friends when they can, doing their thing, just regular people like you and I. I'm just a regular person as well. I know I'm sitting in the patio of the home that I own. I didn't paint this. I didn't have it commissioned to be painted. I bought the place like this. I'm still paying a mortgage. I'm not, like I pay a freaking homeowners association. It's not, I'm not like out here banking. There's a better chance of you becoming somebody like me than the people who you tend to take a lot of advice from. I'm not you specifically, not you, Mom, just in general. So I wanted to just interview just the incredible guys, especially nerdy guys that I have in my life. I have a lot of guy friends. Some I've known for, well over a decade. Friends that I meet I met Gil at a coffee shop of all places. I have a lot of great guy friends who are just incredibly supportive, incredibly respectful, incredibly knowledgeable, incredibly intelligent. And they're just living their lives doing, just great things. And great to me, as Jelani in episode 3 wanted to kind of shut down and joke around about, but great to me is just being a good, positive person, being somebody that you can depend on, someone that you can go to for advice, or someone who can, lend their ear just so you can vent about something, someone who can teach you things. Gil taught me a whole lot about cameras and podcasting. He's one of the main reasons why I even have a podcast. Jacob, my boyfriend, has taught me a lot about cooking. Even my friend Chris, he taught me just not even face to face, but if you ever hang out with Chris, he's very aware of who he was to who he is, and he's very aware of where he had his shortcomings and how he grew from them, which is damn near impossible to find in men. People in general, but men specifically. And and it's just to me, that's what makes just a great person, when you can realize where you've come from and where you're going. And that's sort of one of the reasons why I wanted to have this podcast, because a lot of people are going through their teens and their 20s, and it's such a difficult time in your life, and you don't realize it because it's so much growth, and it's also just very difficult. But you don't realize that the growth that you gather from your teens and your 20s is just insurmountable. And you just become especially you start to realize it once you hit your 30s, that you're just So the reason why this podcast is called Moment of Clarity is because of Jay-Z's The Black Album. There's a track called Moment of Clarity. And there's a line in the song where he says, "You record, I recall, 'cause I really been there before." I feel like a lot of podcasters are just saying shit. They're just saying shit just to say shit. They're saying shit. They're repeating things that people who say things on other podcasts that they're trying to emulate. And then what ends up happening is just the people in just your regular life, when you go to the supermarket or when you go to work or whatever, they start believing it and saying that, and regurgitating the same crap. People like to believe that we're sheep. People are sheep, because of I believe it was probably from like the Bible, like Jesus, son of a shepherd, the people were like sheep and things like that. And sheep aren't really the smartest of animals. I believe people are parrots because how does a parrot learn to talk? It learns to talk from constantly hearing the same thing. If you keep hearing that like illegals, immigrants should be deported, you keep hearing it, you keep hearing it, you keep hearing it, soon you'll be like, immigrants should be deported. And you just say the same thing since you keep hearing it from the people that you trust, and then you just start repeating it. Like, that's how misinformation, disinformation, and overall that's just what propaganda is. You keep seeing the same crap over and over and over again, and then you just start to repeat it, and you start to believe it, when in reality, that's, you don't even know a tenth of it. I won't even say the half. You don't even know the tenth of it. Like, we're a lot more naive and susceptible than we care to think, and that we care to believe. And we just have to be mindful of that. So, just because like these people keep saying these things doesn't mean they've actually lived it. Whereas the people that I'm interviewing, they're not just random people. These are my friends. These are men that I've known for 3+ years, like for several years, who I've spent, extensive amount of time with, who I've just seen how they interact and talk about women, especially. That's a huge thing. Talk about like their family, talk about like their relationships with just people, past relationships. Like, my friends say I'm very observant. People would sometimes find me intimidating because I'm apparently very quiet. I guess I'm just paying attention. I'm actually just legitimately listening to you. From interviewing these men, from editing the videos, because I do the editing myself. It's not fun. I'm sure it was obvious. I remember my mom made the horrendous accusation that my friend Gil did the editing. I was like, no, how dare you insult him like that? That's so rude. He never did anything to you. But Gil did teach me a lot about video editing. But some of the realizations I've had with like interviewing everybody, it was that like damn near everybody grew up religious, and it messed with them to some extent. Like Chris was in Catholic school pretty much from 0 to 18. And then once he graduated high school and like was out into like the real world, which is, I shouldn't even put quotations on it because it kind of is, even though he went into college. Like, he got a job that he was working at for, I think he said he worked there for like 15 years or something crazy. And that's when like he realized that like, that's when like his eyes were like really starting to open. His parents kicked him out because of premarital sex and just like other things. Jelani, like his parents were, and I guess still are, pretty religious. He wanted to be involved in things, but his parents felt like this could get in between him and like his duties at church, which was, I don't know, not ideal. Gil was very, very into Seventh-day Adventist. He even like traveled, like they even had him travel to like other places to like talk and preach. He had like moms tell him that they want their sons to grow up like him and things like that. But, then his wife left the church, and then Gil followed shortly after. Like, it was interesting. But I know that like in his religion, like he couldn't listen to music. I think video games was like an iffy thing, and then it later became okay. Definitely correct me if I'm wrong, Gil. I apologize. Another thing I found to be really interesting is that they all met their significant others in real life. I'm not sure about Jamie. I mean, I know that Jamie's definitely met people online. That's how he met me, in a way. Like, we never conversed online. We just went to a meetup. I think it was Reddit or Facebook. It was a Facebook Reddit. It was related to Reddit. That's how he and I met. But I don't think he and I ever, like, conversed. And then, like, we met at this board game meetup that one of my friends at the time, like, hosted. That's how I met Jamie. But I'm not sure if Jamie met his significant others, because he's polyamorous, on the dating apps. I'm sure he's met some of them for sure, but I don't know if his current partners were from the dating apps. But I found it interesting that they all pretty much met in, like, everybody I've interviewed so far have all met their significant others in real life. I think that kind of goes to show that real life isn't dead. I met my boyfriend at my house. So if you're ever complaining about, oh no, if I want to meet someone, I have to leave the house. Well, I didn't. I hosted a Halloween party. I told people to bring people. And one of my friends, Jelani, actually brought Jacob to my Halloween party. So I did not have to leave the house. I just had to have friends who had friends. So the camera overheated outside, which shouldn't surprise anybody. But it did end at a really good spot, though. I'm not even gonna lie. Yeah, you don't have to go outside to meet anybody. But 9 out of 10 times, of course, you're gonna have to go outside to meet somebody. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting that none of them have. Pretty much all of them have met their significant others in real life. But yeah, so I thought that was just very interesting. Jacob actually lives very close to me, like very close to me. When we first started dating, I showed him like some old pictures of myself, not that old, but I don't know, just pictures of myself. We were like scrolling through each other's like Instagram, showing just like stuff from our past and whatnot. And he saw a picture of me and he was like, I've definitely seen this picture. I've definitely seen this picture. You've had this on a dating app, right? And I was like, yeah, I did. And he was like, oh, I swiped right. He's like, how do you know? I asked him, like, how do you know you swiped right? He was like, oh, I swiped right on everybody, probably. I don't know, I can't remember the exact conversation. He was like, you didn't swipe right on me. So, like, he showed me some of the pictures that he had on dating apps. And I may have recognized, like, one or something. And I don't know. I may have seen him on dating apps. I might have swiped left. I don't know. So it's just kind of funny how you may know somebody. Like, context and timing is key. It's everything. Because I've, on dating apps I was an asshole. I'm not gonna lie about that. I was a jaded asshole. So I was not happy. That was not a space where I was happy. I don't think anybody is. But at my Halloween party, I was a lot happier. I was at my house. I was surrounded by friends. It was music. It was just a fun time. I was also drinking. So he was also drinking. So he had, liquid courage. So he asked me out. So that was a better situation. Whereas dating apps, because we're on our phones looking at perfection every day, whether it's on Instagram or very clean YouTube videos, or what have you, you're seeing very scripted perfection. And then you go on a dating app on the same phone, that you saw all this perfection, you go and see you're in a place where there's imperfection. I would call it like gorgeous imperfection. Like there's gorgeous people, of course, on dating apps, but they're not using like the camera quality of like a Sony FX3 or like they're not using like super professional type of stuff. Sometimes, maybe nowadays they are, but when I was on dating apps, it was just like, pictures that you would take when you would normally take pictures, pictures with like your friends and pictures with just something that you're doing, maybe a picture of food, like just normal pictures that you would take, and that would be on your dating app. And it would be like, pictures you take on your phone and the quality wasn't as good. And even though the quality of phone cameras are amazing now, the average person doesn't know how to use it. So it's just like kind of doing a lot of the work for it. And yeah. And also there's like a lot of filters now. I mean, there were filters back then too, but since I was viewing men, I don't think I really saw filters. If I did, then I don't know. I probably didn't notice in real life. Um, Another realization I had was like post high school, like your college years were just like incredibly tough. I was expecting this. It's sort of a big premise of my podcast to kind of show that we're all a lot more similar than different. You might be going through a really tough time now if you're a young person. Or if you were a young person, you probably remember how hard those times were. And and you're just constantly living it every single day, day in and day out. Like, I remember there were moments when I would just be waking up with just like fits of anxiety just for like days, weeks, months, whether I was like in college freaking out about something or outside of, graduated after, like, and I would just be like, it was just like a really tough time just like mentally for me. And, just trying to find a place, like Jamie's episode, really spoke to me. His was probably like my favorite so far. I know I shouldn't have favorites. And it's like, well, your boyfriend's episode's like, yeah, I mean, I liked it too, but like nobody beats Jamie though. But when I graduated college, I moved back home to South Florida. I went to Florida State, which is in Tallahassee, so I moved all the way down to South Florida. A lot of my friends moved to Orlando, which is like Central Florida. And I was trying really hard to get a job in Orlando. Yeah, because I was like living at home with my parents. It was like such a shit show living there, and I just couldn't get a job in Orlando. I ended up getting a pretty decent job with a really good pay here in South Florida, and I've just been like living in South Florida ever since. I bought a home, like I didn't really want to, but I just wanted to move out of my parents' house, and I was making like a very great salary at the time for what it was. And I was looking for a place to rent just to move out. My sister was my realtor. And she was suggesting that instead of renting, I should buy. And I'm like, sis, I am like, at the time I was 23, about to turn 24. It's like, I am a child. What do you mean buy a home? Like, I'm not an adult, clearly. So she was like, hey, why don't you, I'm sure I've told this story. If not, I'll tell it later. But anyway, long story short, I ended up, buying my home, mainly just to like have my own space and, stop going crazy living with my parents. So like, like I really related to that. Jelani, I knew that he was going through, actually no, I didn't really know he was going through a lot because like I was going through my own shit at the time, so I didn't know that he was going through things either. And that like at one point like we just like reconnected, so like him telling me like his story like in his episode, like it was, I just remembered like little bits and pieces. Like I remember him like falling into like the whole Gamergate like incel thing, and then I didn't really know about it. It wasn't really like on my radar that much, so it was interesting to like hear about it, like from his perspective like years later. That's one of the reasons why I wanted him on my podcast, because I actually had that frame of reference of when he was like in his early mid-20s and like what he was going through. I knew a lot about that, and then like who he is like today and like how he grew from that. Like that was very like tantamount for what I want in my like in this series. Like definitely like one of the main things is just to show growth in this series. That's what I'm like trying to show. Like just because of where you are in your life right now doesn't mean you're going to stay there, and it's not really something that you realize until you're like definitely in your 30s, maybe late 20s, but definitely in your 30s you start to realize, and you can reference things in your past and realize like just how much of an idiot you were and how much less of an idiot you are now. Oh yeah, I did write this down. I do want to say it. Like when we're growing up, going to grade school, elementary, middle, high, like we are very fenced into our lives, whether you went to Catholic school, whether you went to, like church every weekend or what have you, or just like your parents kind of dictate everything that you do. But if you did a sport, it's because your parents like funded the money and the time and the resources for you to do that sport. You didn't just like up and do the sport, but you were just kind of doing a thing, and you're sort of like fenced in because your parents and like your, just the society that you're in was allotted you that ability to do these things, your school or what have you. So you're very fenced in, and then after high school or like after college, like those fences tend to fall. And then like, I've noticed this with like pretty much all the guys that I interviewed so far, like after high school, after college was just incredibly difficult because they've experienced like immense loneliness, betrayal, depression, because of what you didn't realize was keeping you away from depression was, like doing sports, going to school every day and like talking and interacting with kids every day, whether you moved around a lot or not, even though it was of course, very difficult to have friends and make like a solid group of friends, you still interacted with people to an extent every day. And then when you no longer have to do that, it's very daunting, and like you could fall into a depression. Like I fell into a depression in college. I know so many people who fell into depression in college. I know people who fell into depression after college because of just what you knew was just now like gone. And what you didn't realize, like, yeah, we were like fenced into this life. Like those fences were like also our defenses from, experiencing like depression, loneliness, and things of that. I'm not saying that no one experienced that when you were in like middle school, high school. Like, of course we did. We are going through like puberty and all these sorts of changes, and like things are just kind of happening. And then like, I'm sure everyone, a lot of people have definitely experienced just like tragedy in their lives. I'm not saying that, but I've realized that when you just have nobody, when you're like essentially free, and then you realize like freedom is very difficult to obtain. At least like your sense of freedom, like, oh, having your own place, having a job, having your own car, like whatever it is, like the little thing, not little things, but the things that we define as freedom can also just be very lonely. And yeah, that's just something that I, like noticed. One thing that I think is just very important, it's kind of, I don't want it to contradict what I just said, because like I noticed that even though like there was like definitely like moments of loneliness and just betrayal and uncertainty with a lot of them, like Chris being homeless, a lot of like pretty much everyone that I interviewed had like a really solid group of friends. They had a really solid friendship base. They all experienced like levels of brokenness, like being like just without money, without just being able to get like their basic needs met. Because of lack of resources, lack of money. They've had friends who would buy them, like take them out and like, not expect, just pay for them, which was great, or, just because they just wanted to spend time with them because they actually genuinely enjoyed their company. Like the money wasn't important. I know that, like, of course, money is incredibly important. Some will argue, at times I argue that money's everything. So I know that a lot of problems can be resolved if people just had more money to fund the things that, get the things that they need. You can have money and have all your needs met and still be lonely, but it's very possible to not have money and have a lot of friends. I don't know where I'm going with this. Let me think. Yeah, but having their friends definitely saved their lives, which is damn near impossible to say for a lot of, like a lot of things. Like money is incredibly helpful, is incredibly useful. I'm not going to downplay money at all, but like friendship is like what saved a lot of them, like creating like their own base, finding friends, finding ways to network, or just ways to connect with others. It also helped them find like their place, like help them find like who they are. Like even though like with Jelani, for example, like one of his friends like betrayed him, he still had friends, like he still had me, he still had, like some really good friends that he could always like call and rely on if anything. Even like at your darkest moments, if you have somebody that you can contact. Jacob, for example, even during his darkest moments or after darkest moments, he was still able to talk to and reach out to people and be like, hey, this is a thing that occurred. This is a thing that I did. Can you just look out for me? Having people that can just look out for you, just text you every once in a while, call you every once in a while is just so important. And I think that's just something that we all should do because you never know how people are doing. And the last thing I want to touch on is like, it seems as though pretty much all the guys I've interviewed have had very good, close relationships with women. And I'm not just saying like their sister, for example, even though like I know like Jelani's sister definitely like inspired him, It was just also having like really good friends. Like I know that my boyfriend Jacob, he has a lot of women friends. That's one of the things I like about him. That's a green flag to me. Because if you're gonna tell me that you have no women that care about you at all, that says more about you than it does about them. I've met a lot of Jacob's like women friends. Jelani introduced me to his wife Morgan. I mean, at the time they were dating, but Morgan wasn't like intimidated or anything. And like I've had a lot of guy friends, and like they would introduce me to like their girlfriends, and then the girlfriends would get jealous, or just some like, bullshit would arise when it's like, I'm not trying to take your man. You just want to, like I'm not trying to take your man or anything. It's just, he's just a friend. But if they can't, conceptualize that, then that says more about their partner than it does about me and the relationship with your boyfriend, who is my friend. Because like, I can understand if I was like incredibly problematic. But if I'm not like hitting your boyfriend up at like 3 a.m., every day or something, like I try to be respectful of like my guy friends who are partnered, because like I don't want to like text them at like 10, 11 midnight. Some of them I know like work late, so it's like a different thing. And if they're like messaging me and it's like strictly like platonic stuff, like there's times when like, me and Gil are like having conversations at, like 10, 11 at night. Cause like I know that he works late and, I'm just awake. But yeah, I just wanted to share that. Of course, give Bear some time to watch the other episodes so they don't feel rushed to, finish everything. But yeah, let me know if you want me to do more episodes like this, more episodes of just me just talking. This was fun. It was a bit nerve-wracking because I usually have other people, whether it was like with the Melanated Council, I've had like Ron and Toby, or even like Moment of Clarity, I have like somebody else. I know that with Agreeable Gray Area, it's just me talking, but I'm never really in front of a camera. But I figured, let me just use the things that I have. I have this amazing DJI Osmo Pocket 3. I got like the Creator combo, so it came with this microphone. Really great microphone. I'm sure you've seen it on other creators that you, or YouTubers that you see. Really great microphone. I realized for the first half when I was outside. I didn't press the record thingamabob on this, so I don't know if it just directly recorded to the Osmo Pocket 3. I don't think it recorded to here. So I just made a really grave mistake. And we're just gonna, we're just gonna live with it. Because that's life. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, do the YouTube things. And we'll be back to our regularly scheduled program on, I want to say, it's June 30th. I know it's the last Monday of June. That sounds like a Monday. Why not? Let's call it a Monday. All right. Thank you so much for watching.